right. Well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, we always introduce the beer that we're having, and today we'll just do a real quick shout out to George Wendt, unfortunately passed away, Norm from Cheers, and I'm going with a Wicked
Wait,
Throat Charmer Hazy IPA.
Norm passed away?
Oh, I thought I when I said that to you before the show, I thought you knew
No.
George Wendt passed away today.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Cheers. Yeah. No, I did not know that. Okay.
yeah, my bad. So
Okay.
so I'm going with the Wicked Throat Charmer Hazy IPA for Norm and all those great moments of Norm. I
No,
like this. I'm gonna have to go back and watch some of those.
I
So
didn't. Oh, that's too bad. That's
yeah,
sad. Okay.
yeah. So anyway, we decided we were going to do some shorter videos on kind of a positional previews. That's what we're going to call these for 2025. And for tonight, we're going to do the running backs, which doesn't have a lot of pieces at play. It seems like a few of them are going to be locked in, but some very interesting storylines with the running backs.
Yeah, this will probably be our easiest one, I think, of all the position previews. I don't know if that was intentional on your part, but and I don't want to speak for you, but there are currently 6 running backs on the roster, and I think we have a pretty good idea how this is going to go. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to start off with reviewing sort of what happened last year, but again, we started the year off with Devin Singletary as the starting running back. That lasted 4 games until Tyrone Tracy was given the starting job, and he was the starter for the rest of the year and had the bulk of the carries for the year. And overall, given the fact that we had no quarterbacks and the offensive line was a mess with all the injuries,
right?
Running backs weren't too bad last year. They averaged, I think, as a unit around 4.2 yards per carry, which is respectable. I think it was 18th, which is right in the middle of the pack. And as a team, I think we were lower in terms of rushing yards per game, and that's probably a reflection of the quarterbacks not really running for many yards too. So many of these teams now that are the high rushing teams, their quarterbacks are running for a lot of yardage. So it was a decent room last year, and then of course we've added to it.
Yeah, first piece of what you just said is yes. I kind of thought we would ease into it with one that was probably going to be a little bit easier to do. Yeah, last year, I mean, let's start with really the elephant in the room was the whole here comes Saquon Barkley, there goes Saquon Barkley, and all the drama around that. Exactly. Exactly. Sleeps better at night now. That really that kind of led into the season where you kind of knew no matter what was going to happen, the running back position wasn't going to be looked at by other people outside of the Giants world. It wasn't going to be looked at favorably. It was always going to come back to, well, you let Barkley go.
Right.
But you got Turbo, which I always hated when they kept calling him that. But we had Devin Singletary, and then we had Tracy, which was coming on, and you didn't know what you were going to have with him. And then you've got some guys we're thinking about Turbo Miller might be able to. His name sounds great. Eric Gray was there, another draft pick. It was kind of like a mishmash of stuff, but ultimately came down to Singletary and Tracy getting the bulk of the play, and Tracy really surprising last year. The only concern is put the ball on the ground a number of times. But let's be honest, Tiki Barber did that early in his career too.
Right.
And there's some similarities in their body styles and stuff. I think Tiki was a little bit more angular. He was a little bit more easily slipping things, where Tracy he's a little more upright, but he does have, he has decent speed. I don't think he has great long speed, but he has definitely decent speed. Your thoughts, though, first off, before we get to any of the competition for this year, what did you think overall of where they started, which seemed like it was going to be Singletary and his connection to Dayball, and then Tracy taking over?
Yeah, it's interesting that we didn't really know what Tracy was going to be like because he was a lower round draft pick, a 5th round draft pick. He'd been a wide receiver most of his career in college. And some people who were very excited about him, were basing it on that 1 year. It's interesting. The same people that were really excited about him that I follow are really excited about Skattebo. But a lot of people, draftniks, were really high on Tyrone Tracy, even though he went late. They said he's one of their favorite guys to follow. I was sort of in the camp of, yeah, come on, he's just 1 year in college, and he's going to play with the big boys now. Besides the fumbling, I thought he blew me away. He's
Yeah.
very instinctive. He runs tougher than his size. And when I saw his, he's not a small guy, but he's not big. And I thought he was a fairly physical running back with moves, and he had some breakaway ability. So if he can rein in the fumbling, and the irony is I think he had 5 drop passes last year. So again, some of this is rookie hiccup type stuff. When we get into the tight ends, Theo Johnson, for instance, had some drops. I always say with the rookies, some of this is them being overwhelmed a little bit too. So let's see how this fleshes out. But I thought he was a good enough player that had the Giants not come out of the draft with a running back, I would have been a little bit disappointed, but I don't think I would have been devastated. I really like Tracy. I love our room now, and we'll talk about Skattebo in a bit. But to me, Singletary's now kind of been relegated to almost third string, because I'm assuming Skattebo is going to play sooner than later. And Eric Gray was an afterthought other than kick returns, and his biggest problem, we'll talk about him in a second, but more in depth in a second, but his biggest problem has also been ball security, and they just don't give him, he doesn't get any touches from the
Right.
line. He had 13 carries last year. All the carries last year went to 3 backs. I had to look this up. They went to Tracy and Singletary overwhelmingly had all of them, and then Gray had 13 touches after that. He barely touched the ball as a running back. And he had some catches as well. I think he had about 10 catches. So they basically were a two-headed monster, but they really had handed off the torch to Tracy, and I was really impressed. And Singletary isn't a bad back. He's just I just think that Tracy was more dynamic.
I would think if the Giants had their, I don't want to say their way, but if their wishes kind of came through, right? You drafted Gray, you kind of would hope that he could show you something, and then you would have a Tracy, and we're going to get to Skattebo and Gray, and then you could kind of move off from Singletary if you wanted to, because he's the one guy that's going to command more money than the rest, and he's really going to be second at this point, unless something weird happens in training camp and Tracy comes in and just does not take the bull by the horns. Singletary is going to move down the depth chart, and
Right.
it was interesting to see that. The one thing you brought up that I think Tracy does need to work on a little bit, the fumbles. We'll give that kind of a, like you said, it's a rookie thing. He hasn't been a running back for a long time, so
Right.
those constant hits carrying the ball, it's a little different. But him dropping passes as a former wide receiver, that's something that can't really happen if he wants to continue to be able to be a multifaceted, dynamic user in the game plan. He's got to be able to do both. I would think, and I want to ask you your opinion. I've made this point before. I would think the Giants would want to keep his touches, at least his full on carries, maybe not receptions, but his full on carries, probably within the same range of where they were. Let's say give him maybe plus or
Right.
minus 20. He had 192. You don't want this guy to be a 250, 260 carry back. I just don't think that's where he's at physically.
Well, I don't think that roster's set up for that now anyways. So that's the good news, is by getting Skattebo, his carries may actually decline, but his productivity may actually increase. That's one of the reasons why I like this room. So I don't see. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but I don't see the Giants carrying 4 running backs. I see them stashing some guys, maybe 1 or 2 guys on the practice squad, but I don't think they're going to. We saw it last year. Eric Gray barely touched the ball. So now if Singletary kind of moves into that third role, he's probably not going to get a lot of touches. And I wouldn't keep a 4th running back on this team. I think you can put guys like Eric Gray and Miller on the practice squad, and we'll
Right.
see what on Rashawn Baker, the free agent that they sent, who's a big dude too. He's a big physical dude. But I would think Singletary, this might be his last year with the Giants, and if everyone stays healthy, I think you're looking at 3 running backs with a really good depth, and you could start one guy 1 week, start another guy in another week, and I don't know if there'd be much of a drop off. So, and like you said, now you don't have to give them each of them a lot of carries. They all can catch. They're all good runners. And I still think we kind of underrate Singletary a little bit here. He's not a great back, but he's been a very successful back in this league. And if he's your third running back, you've got a really good room. So I like the running back room. I think it's great. You got the shiftier, a little bit more explosive guy in Tracy, and now you've got the bowling ball and Skattebo. And what's going to be interesting is how they use them. Do they go series by series? Do they go with the guy who's got the hot hand? Is it situational? Is Skattebo the short yardage back, but is he more than that? He can catch the ball. He may have the best hands on of all the running backs, believe it or not, Skattebo. So it's just going to be very interesting. It's a fun room. I'm actually really excited. I hope they've got the run blocking, because I think this is a really good running back room. I never really felt like they got Saquon into his groove. And there might be various reasons for that: offensive line, quarterback play, coaching, Saquon getting hurt a lot. But this room has depth. And if somebody does get nicked up, you've got somebody to fall back on. So I'm actually really excited about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking. I wanted to ask you your thoughts. How much of the running game is going to be? We're projecting, but it's going to be opened up just from the fact that you have, in theory, very competent quarterback play, very veteran quarterbacks, and quarterbacks that, if you just ignore Dart for the moment, and that'll be a whole different show when we do the quarterbacks. But just with Wilson and Winston, you have guys who throw the ball down the field.
Right.
So you can't commit 7, 8 to the box. When you had Jones and Barkley, a lot of it was really, and we've talked about it many times, right? In 22, the Giants caught a lot of people off guard because it would be, is it going to be Barkley carrying it, or is Jones keeping it running? Once teams figured out, if I just stay home on the outside as far as the fake to Jones, and everybody else on the other side keys to wherever Barkley goes, we can handle their running game. We got it more contained. Their passing game wasn't going to beat us. But with a Wilson and a Winston, I don't think you can commit as easily that way. And neither one of those guys is going to be a running guy. They're not going to fake the handoffs and keep the ball.
Right.
So it is going to, you're going to have to play the run or the pass, but you're not going to be able to sell out on either one.
What I'm very, very curious to see is what the New York Giants offense, sans Daniel Jones, is going to look like. Are we finally going to see what Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka's vision for this offense is going to be, running the ball, passing the ball? Because as you and I have talked about repeatedly, we never really knew what we were on offense. And I still don't really know what we intend to be on offense. And that's a good thing in the sense that the teams that we're going to face probably don't know that either. So maybe we can catch them off guard a little bit. But I hope they come up with a plan here. I could see us being more of a play action team now. That's something that Russell Wilson's very good at. So, but is that the kind of offense that we're going to run? I don't know. I mean, but you make a great point. You saw it on BBI, Big Blue Interactive. You saw that on BBI this week. Is you're still got people lamenting and pining for Daniel Jones. I don't get it. I can't fathom. I was talking about this with my wife earlier, and she said he had 6 years. How many?
Right.
How many chances did they give him? I mean, so I still think there's a group of Giants fans out there that don't really want to accept how bad our quarterback play has been for the last 6 years. And that included Drew Lock last year, and it's included DeVito, and it's just been bad. And teams haven't had to worry about our quarterbacks. So like you said, if they have to start worrying about a Super Bowl winning quarterback like Russell Wilson, seeing one-on-one coverage, and he's got Malik Neighbors, or he's got Slayton, they may have to back off a little bit, and that'll open up the running game. So will the Giants coaching staff take advantage of that? That's one of the big mysteries that I'm actually very curious to see. But I think they've got the horses in the stable here. I love the diversity of the running backs. You got, again, Tracy is the shifty guy. Skattebo is the battering ram. Singletary's the wily vet who can do a little bit of everything. I really love the makeup of the room. It's got veteran experience, it's got youth, it's got attitude, it's got toughness now. And the one thing that all these guys have to do though is hold on to the ball. They've all had some fumbling issues, even Skattebo in his career. So hopefully the high and tight from the old Tom Coughlin days gets preached into them. So, but the other thing too is this: if somebody starts fumbling, or somebody is not having a great game, guess what? You're out of here, and the other guy's coming in. So you talked earlier about Tracy's got to clean some things up. Well, he better clean some things up, or Skattebo's going to take his snaps.
So is that let's talk about him for just a minute. So he's rookie coming in again, another mid-round pick guy. So obviously he wasn't a first or second round guy.
And so was Eric Ray.
Guy, yeah. So a guy though that he's kind of a jack of all trades. I don't know if he has one particular thing that I would say he's just that, but it's a lot of it is around his more like his attitude. I know I said it before. He kind of reminds me a little bit about Ahmad Bradshaw.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that herky jerky movement. He runs a little bit bigger than I think he is. So your thoughts, what are you expecting from him? And then anything you're worried about with him?
I'll start with the negative first. My negative is what some people have talked about is, does his game translate to the NFL? And I'm optimistic, but it is a legitimate question. He is so physical, and he is a throwback, and the game is different than it was 30 years ago. And he's kind of an old throwback, I'm going to run over you kind of guy. Right. Again, I think some people ignore or have missed that he's pretty shifty. So he can make you miss, but the reason why he doesn't remind me of Ahmad Bradshaw is I don't know who he reminds. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, you said it for you.
I don't know who I would compare him to. He's almost built like a fullback, but he's so shifty, and people just bounce off of him, and his center of gravity is so low to the ground. The first time I saw his highlights, I was in the living room. My wife was in the kitchen, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, this is unbelievable. I said, you got to come here and watch this guy. He's got some of the best highlights I've ever seen. I mean, fun too. One of my favorite runs he had was it was a red zone run where he was running outside, and there were two defenders who had him defensive backs. At least one was a defensive back. I think one might have been a smaller linebacker, but they both had him dead to rights, and he outran them to the corner. He showed his athleticism, and then somebody tried to tackle him at the goal line, and he just laid his shoulder in him, and the guy just collapsed, and Skattebo stood over him just like, and it was like one of the best runs I've ever seen for I don't know, it was like a 5-yard touchdown run, but it was like, holy crap. And in the playoffs, he was insane. So I don't know if you saw any of the playoff games that he had, but he was like a one-man, because they were without their star wide receiver who's going to be in the draft this year. Can't think of his name right now, Jordan. But he was basically a one-man wrecking crew. And so I don't know who he reminds me of. I don't think it's Bradshaw. I think he's got a unique style, and I'm really excited to see him. I also think Brian Daboll loves the guy, because when he talks about him, he lights up. So I have a feeling that Daboll, like he was lobbying for the quarterback in Dart, I have a feeling Daboll was lobbying for Skattebo. And what's interesting is the Giants had a number of running backs on the table when they took him. So there was like a run of running backs earlier on the second day of the draft. And then on the third day of the draft, the Giants kind of started the run on the next group of running backs. And I think Tootin went right before Skattebo, But then after the Giants took Skattebo, there was a run on running back. So like the Giants had kind of had their preference with quarterback, they kind of had their preference with running back too. It wasn't like the Giants settled on a running back. I think they got the guy they were targeting. And again, he was a 30 visit. All the Giants draft picks, except for Fedoni, were 30 visits. And Fedoni might have been too. We just don't know. But he obviously was a target of theirs.
So for me, I think you hear him talk, and I actually have heard him talk about Daboll. I'm on board with you 100%. It's not just the way Daboll talks about him; it's the way he talks about Daboll and the interactions that they've been having with Daboll.
You saw that today?
Yeah, I saw that with the Kay Adams thing.
Yeah, you may want to explain that because people.
Yeah, so basically they were talking about this headbutt thing that was between Skattebo and Jackson Dart. And
then, for those who haven't seen it, Jackson Dart and Skattebo have started headbutting each other in public.
Yeah, which there we go. And then they mentioned, and Kay Adams goes, Brian Daboll's you're gonna have to step in and stop it. And then Skattebo says Daboll is a big part. He goes, called them little. That little guy is all part of it. And I'm thinking he's shown so much excitement around this rookie class. Overall, that might be a very good thing, but it also might be like, are you tethering your coaching career to this class that just came in, and that's why you're so excited? That's for another day. But Daboll seems very, very, very excited. I see Skattebo as a guy that is going to compete for time. I don't know if he's going to compete to possibly start. I think Tracy, Singletary, those guys are probably, but I don't think starting is going to matter so much as we move forward. I think it's, I think it's semantics, like it doesn't matter. It was just who was out there first. My question, though, is we know there's 3. You say there probably won't be 4. I agree. If there was a true fullback, maybe we would do 4 and the fullback would be 4. But they're going to use tight ends. When we do that group, I think we'll be talking about that's going to be the fullback, essentially.
That's one of the reasons why I think they're going to have 3. I think they're going to carry more tight ends. That's my prediction. I don't know if that's going to be accurate, but I think they're going to carry more tight ends and they'll have to carry fewer running backs.
So do you see any chance that any of the other guys that we are kind of talking about right now could knock Singletary out of the third? Because you're not getting rid of Skattebo. You're not getting rid of Tracy. They're young. They're cheaper. It's just not happening. Singletary's the one guy that potentially the Giants still need to make up more room on the salary cap. It's not that they're in bad shape salary cap wise. They just need to adjust some contracts for this single year. Next year, they're in really good shape. But Singletary's a guy, though, that on the numbers wise, if he's equal, like let's say Eric Gray tears it up in camp and the Giants are like, man, Gray's really come in. Could he unseat a Singletary? Could a Miller unseat Singletary if Singletary is going to be the 3?
It would have to be something like that. It would have to be one of the other 3 guys is clearly better because I think there's a comfort. Well, it's stating the obvious because Daboll brought him back. Daboll had him in Buffalo and then they brought him with them to New York. There's a comfort level with Daboll and Singletary. And I think there's an advantage to having a veteran in the room with Skattebo, and still Tracy's still a very young player. So would I be shocked? No, but I expect Singletary to make this team unless something happened like you just said. The one thing I do want this, Eric Gray gets a lot of grief. And again, I know I'm one of his few defenders out there. And I went back and watched his college tape because I wanted to see, and I talked to Cy about this offline a little bit too. And I'm like, what is going on with Eric Gray? Because Eric Gray doesn't look like the same player he was in college to me. And I don't know if it's, he missed a month last year because he got hurt. I think it was a calf injury, but I'd have to double check that. But he missed a month last year and he only touched the ball, running the ball 13 times. And they've really pretty much put on kick returns, which is something he never did in college. Again, you and I have talked about this over the years about the number of curious coaching decisions this team has made, not getting ready for the opening game and kicking issues and stuff like that. But one of the other ones is not having a kick returner and a punt returner. And finally they got one the last couple of years and we saw what a difference it makes, but they still have him returning kickoffs, which I don't think he's terribly comfortable with doing that. So I think Giants fans understandably conflate the kick return woes, and there have been many. I think he's got 5 or 6 fumbles, and say the player sucks. Well, I don't like the fact that coaches have put the player in a position that he's clearly not suited for. And I still think there's talent there. When he played last preseason, I don't know if you remember, but he had some really good preseason games last year. I think it was against Detroit.
Detroit. It was against Detroit.
He had a huge run for a touchdown. He had a great catch out of the backfield. So if your scenario was to happen, I think it would have to be somebody like Eric Gray really finally showing why the Giants drafted him in the first place. And if he does that, that's fantastic. My guess is Eric Gray is 4th string on the depth chart in camp. He doesn't get many touches. He gets a few touches in the preseason. The Giants feel like they can cut him and put him on the practice squad. And then if somebody gets hurt, like a Tracy or a Skattebo or Singletary, they could safely bring him up from the practice squad. That's my guess is what's going to happen. But your scenario is not impossible, but it would have to be, like you said, one of these guys like him, and Dante Miller is a fan favorite. Even though he hasn't done anything yet, because he's so fast, and again, that speed is there. I mean, he's the fastest. He's the fastest. I mean, I think it's easy to say he's the fastest running back on this team. But running the football is more about than speed too. But Turbo Miller is another guy. I don't like Turbo. I should say Dante. Dante Miller is another guy that could end up on the practice squad too. These are the kinds of guys that I don't think other teams are going to be clamoring for, is my guess. If you cut a Dante Miller and an Eric Gray, I think you can stash them. That's my opinion. You may feel different.
No. I'm 100%. In fact, I was going to ask you this. If the Giants felt like they needed a different kind of player at the position, could you see them in camp as players are being cut or released, maybe bring in a different veteran in who brings, let's say, size, maybe a 230, a 240-pound guy that they can bring in and they could use as a short yardage guy, a goal line guy if they wanted to, if they wanted a different type of back. Because really, if you look at it, Tracy, Skattebo, and Singletary, they do things slightly different, but they're all roughly in the same group. There isn't one of them that's like 195 or 245. They're all kind of right around in that same size, same type of body, same type of usage ability. Skattebo would be the one, maybe a more physical, but that's more mentality than it is just pure size. So could you see them possibly maybe bringing somebody else in who's just a completely different back?
No, and I don't think there's a big difference in body type from Tracy and Skattebo. They may be listed like the same general weight and height, and I mean Skattebo is like they list him at 5'10" on Giants.com. He's closer to 5'9". He's a short dude. What is it, Tracy? Tracy's 5'10" or 5'11"? I can't.
5'11".
5'11".
He's 210, and Skattebo's 225.
And look, Skattebo is not. Some Giants fans who haven't seen Skattebo play are going to say he's a situational short yardage runner. He's not. He's more than that. But he can be that guy too. So I can't see any world where, unless there's an injury, the Giants bring in another running back at this stage. I think if anything, they've got too many running backs and not enough carries at this point. So I think they're going to carry 3, and they've got their 3. Again, knock on wood, no one gets hurt. But I think this is going to be the easiest preview I think that we have.
Yeah,
I think it's the 3 guys we know they are, if they stay healthy, are going to be the opening day starters. I mean, opening day players. And I would be shocked if they weren't, and I would be a little bit shocked if 1 or 2 of the other guys aren't put on the practice squad. And the other guy we should not completely discount is Rashawn Baker, and from Elon University, and he's an interesting guy. He's a big physical guy. He's more like the guy that you were just talking about. He's a bigger guy, more of that big. If you wanted a big back, a different body type, he's got the different body type. He's a big dude, and he is someone again. I don't think they're going to put 3 running backs in the practice squad, but he's a guy who could contend for a spot. And then the other long term is Devin is probably. Wouldn't you think this is going to be his final year
Oh
with the
yeah,
Giants?
without a doubt. Yeah,
So
yeah.
they got to think which of the other 3, if any, might be the number 3 running back in 2026. I mean, they're only going to have 6 draft picks next year. I don't think they want to spend another draft pick on a running back next year, unless there's somebody really, really good out there. But I think they're going to want to hopefully have one of the other guys on the other 3 guys stick around and be the number three dude next year. And it could be Rashawn, it could be Eric Gray, and it could be Dante Miller. We'll have to see. What will set a lot of this apart too, and then people are going to say we didn't bring it up, so I want to bring it up now, is pass protection. Whoever's really good in pass protection is going to probably play more as well too. That's the one thing I'm very curious in Skattebo. Some people have said he's not great at it. Other people say he is. He certainly has the demeanor. If he's headbutting, he's headbutting people left and right. He's probably should have the physical instinctiveness to be one. And he's not shying away from contact. So we'll see. So I'm excited about this. This is one of my favorite position groups now on the Giants. And I'll be honest with you, even when Saquon was there, other than his rookie year, look, when Saquon had his rookie year, I thought we were set for a decade. And that just shows you how things can spiral out of control so quickly in the NFL. And then he kept getting hurt. And then he finally kind of rebounded in 2022. And then again, he kind of got hurt again last year. And a lot of us weren't really upset he was gone last year. And we all said the same thing pretty much. If he stays healthy, he'll be great in Philadelphia. And that's what happened. He stayed healthy. A lot of people expected him to get hurt. And for the 3rd time in his career, he didn't get hurt last year. So that always kind of bothered me that we were relying on a star running back who kept getting hurt. And once he got hurt, the whole offense collapsed. Now we got a room that if somebody gets hurt, somebody else can pick up the slack.
Well, and not to beat a dead horse, it's a conversation we had multiple times. I still don't really care what he did with Philadelphia. It wasn't applicable to what he would have done with the Giants last year. Yeah. Would they have gone to the Super Bowl with Barkley? No. Would Barkley have had the numbers that he had with the Eagles with the Giants last year? No. And it's all circumstance, right? And it's system, it's moments, it just collectively that was the best spot for him. A team built around a very big offensive line, a very physical offensive line, a very deep offensive line, but also with a lot of weapons and a
loaded
quarterback
with weapons,
and a quarterback that can
loaded with
run.
weapons. Yeah.
And so that just opens up. But when you suddenly make him the only guy, it's a whole different world. So yes, it's disappointing on how things went with the Giants. It's too bad. I kind of like where we're at. I'm with you. I like the committee piece that we have. I like the fact that I don't really know which guy is going to be week. I do like the fact, too, that Russell Wilson throws a pretty good ball to the outside coming out of the backfield. He's got some looping, nice passes to backs. And the one thing we've always said is the biggest problem, not to bring up the carcass one more time, but one of the biggest problems with Daniel Jones is lots of his passes never led anybody anywhere. They were at the person,
right,
but not leading them,
right,
thus reducing the ability to make yards after the catch. Wilson's going to hit you in stride. Wilson's going to give you a ball that lets you continue going forward, and our backs are going to get a much better chance. We've been horrible with screen passes even with Eli, we were not good. So we have been really bad. And I kind of feel like now Wilson can. I don't know about Winston, but I definitely know Wilson can.
That's a really excellent point, John, that he is, again, we've been talking about the moon balls, and he's not, well, he hasn't historically thrown a lot over the middle, but he does throw in the flats a lot. So he's very good at throwing to the running backs out of the backfield, and that fits our offense right now. A guy it's again, we'll have to see, but Wandale's probably not going to be thrilled with this, but we'll see. We'll see. And we've got some big tight ends now with big catch radiuses, and we'll talk about that in our next preview, which will be the tight ends. And so I'm excited about that. There are things about this team that I'm actually really looking forward to. I'm looking like the carcass is not It's not there anymore. And that in itself has got me excited about the Giants. I think people have picked it up on the site. I'm more excited about the Giants than I've been in years because consciously or subconsciously, I know that they're a better team right now. So
Right.
we'll
Right.
see. The schedule's a bitch. We've already talked about it. You're in a different place than I am about that. It is what it is. You have to deal with it. But I really like to make up. The last thing I will say to wrap this up is a point that you made earlier in this video, and it will tie into one of our upcoming specials, which is going to be reviewing the 1984 New York Giants season. We're going to have Larry and Matt on, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And doing a little bit of reading on that season, because to just refresh my memory, is one of the reasons Parcells turned over that roster between an 83 and 84 is he wanted, you and I have talked about it more, like get the stink of the losing off of the team. He wanted new guys with a fresh perspective. He wanted his guys. And you talked about earlier in this video about, is Dable maybe getting some of his guys now, better or worse, they're bringing in some more of his guys. So I feel it's almost like there's a parallel there that you've brought up before with the 1984 Giants about, is this going to be a somewhat similar? There is a similarity in this sense. Is Dable, these rookies, this young class may have a psychological impact on the New York Giants too. So a Skattebo might bring toughness and an attitude to this team. And Alexander, the defensive tackle, the same thing. He may bring, again, a new presence in the middle of the defense. We're not talking about him enough. So we'll see. So it's a fun group, and I'm looking forward to it.
So with that, if you could comment in the comment section, who are your running backs? Are you going with 3? Are you going with 4? Who are your 4? Who do you think is going to be the starter? Anything you want to talk about? What did we miss? Did we miss something with the backs? What's your thoughts on where the Giants are with the running backs? We want to kind of keep that going. There's been a lot of comments. We try to keep up on them too. So if we don't take it personal. So I am trying to keep track of a lot of different things at the same time, but we will continue to stay up with it. But if you can comment on that, I might do a poll on the Spotify one. I usually add a poll on Spotify, but definitely keep it up. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the 84 one for a lot of reasons. And what you got there, buddy?
Just question: who's your starting running back on opening day?
Tracy. Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, it's mine. I'm going with that.
Minus injury, Tyrone Tracy.
Okay.
I think Tracy is the what he did last year. I think is just a tip of the iceberg of what the Giants think they can do with him. And that offensive line, just assuming it's healthy, and we have a solid 5, which worst case scenario, Van Roten's the guard from last year back again.
Right.
But other than that, if one of the other guys steps in, if Neal becomes a big road grader running block, guy at guard, I don't know about his pass blocking, but if they get something like that out of there, somebody like Tracy's really going to start seeing some holes that he can exploit. And I think with Russell Wilson, that opens up. So I think it's Tracy. I think,
and those 2 first games, they got to try to win. They got to try to win those first 2 games. And you throw a rookie in there, that makes you a little more nervous. So I think Skattebo is going to play, and I think he's going to play in a very important role. But when they're going to be on the road and that stadium is going to be rocking, those 2 stadiums both are going to be rocking because we're the home openers for both those teams. And right, Dallas, we're the home opener for Dallas as well too.
Yeah, we're on the road for both games. Yes, Dallas.
Right, but that's Dallas.
Dallas is at Philly week 1.
Right.
Yes.
So if they're a home opener, so those stadiums are going to be rocking. I think they want the vet in there to start. So,
but I'll do one. I'll throw one other thing in there.
Right.
1989, the Giants open up in Washington on a Monday night.
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite games.
It is a 5th-round running back, Dave Meggett, who catches a pass over the middle,
Right.
breaks a tackle by Monty Coleman, and he's off to the races for a touchdown. We have a 4th-round running back who we just drafted and a 5th-round running back from last year. So just
but the old wily veteran OJ Anderson was the one who really set the tone in that game. And that's one of my favorite games is the local Washington D.C. announcer on the sports sports show predicted. He said there was no way the Redskins were going to lose to a team with a running back as old as O.J. Anderson starting. And you know how that game ended with that long field goal.
Oh, yeah, Raul Allegra.
It was like,
absolutely.
what, 54?
52.
52. Yeah, and that was a great game. Yeah, that was a great game.
Man, I love going back in time on this stuff.
That was a game the Giants were not supposed to win either. So
and they were gassed at halftime. The Giants defense,
Yep.
LT had to get an IV at halftime. He was all over the field, but he was owning Jim Lachey in that game. So that's something to remember as well.
Yeah, that was a great game. Okay.
So with that, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're really growing. I haven't even talked to Eric about this yet, but I had a podcaster who does scouting, NFL scouting, has his own show, and they are Detroit Lions related. Has reached out to us and they want to collab. They want to collaborate. So we get a lot of stuff. I'm looking forward to it. But like, subscribe. We'll catch you again real soon.